We have only started.
It was a Tuesday morning when we drew the line. It was a WTO coming to town. We swore we gonna shut it down. And they stood there with their big police. They had the National Guard out to keep the peace with the guns and the clubs and the chemical gas. The fully would not let them pass. And they raised and roared and their tempers flared. And there were bombs bursting in the daylight air. They run us off, do us in, but we came right back. Shut it down, didn't we? November 30th, 99 millennium, passing as the numbers climb, and the people came from everywhere. There must have been 50,000 out there. There were farmers, unions, rank and file. Every grassroots has its own style. There were great big puppets 2 stories tall. There were drummers drumming in the shopping malls. There were so many people that you couldn't see. How that many people got into the city, and the WTO delegates too. We were locked down so they couldn't get through. Didn't we? Shut it down, didn't we? November 30th, 99, lockdown at the police line, and they hit me with everything they got. You ain't moving like it or not, and they're tying your wrists with plastic cuffs, and they're loading you up on a great big bus, and they're taking you down to the Navy base. PepperSpraying you right in the face, try to break you down, try to get you to kneel. Read about the unity, listen to real, and they can't take a spirit that's coming alive. That's the kind of spirit that's bound to survive. Shut it down.
The World Trade Organization is the only international organization dealing with the global rules of trade between nations. Its main function is to ensure that trade flows as smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible. The result is a more prosperous, peaceful, and accountable economic world.
This is the beginning, and everything's at stake.
There's only one thing that the ruling interests have ever wanted, and that's everything.
What we are against is trade at any cost.
This is not about trade. This is about a corporate constitution.
We're pitted to be pitted against each other in a race to the bottom. Who will accept the most miserable working conditions?
Well, I think it's a very telling fact that you can go out on the street anywhere in the United States and ask people to give you one sentence about the World Trade Organization, and they won't be able to say one intelligible sentence about what it is, where it's based, what it does, when it was created, whose interests it serves, whose interest does it hurt.
We're talking about trade agreements which don't have to do just with trade, but they have to do with every aspect of life. They have to do with agriculture, they have to do with our forests, they have to do with the environment and nature, they have to do with how we lead our lives, they have to do with what kind of human rights we have.
And the World Trade Organization is, in a sense, the court that decides when there's a dispute between corporations, between governments, how will it come down. It's very instructive to look at the record of all the cases that the WTO has ruled on, whether it's the sea turtles versus corporations, the dolphins versus corporations, the small farmers versus corporations. In every single case, the WTO has ruled on the side of big corporations and against people and the environment.
We are talking about trade agreements which don't have to do just with trade, but they have to do with every aspect of life. They have to do with agriculture, they have to do with our forests, they have to do with the environment and nature, they have to do with how we lead our lives, they have to do with what kind of human rights we have.
Most Americans don't know about that. They know there's some big rich guys up there, Bill Gates and this and that. They don't really know how the whole financial structure of their country and the world has been put into place and has been operating, treating them as grist for this system.
The World Trade Organization is based in Geneva, Switzerland. It groups 134 national governments who signed on to a treaty called GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. And they agreed to abide by these rules. And the World Trade Organization is, in a sense, the court that decides when there's a dispute between corporations, between governments, how will it come down. It's very instructive to look at the record of all the cases that the WTO has ruled on, whether it's the sea turtles versus corporations, the dolphins versus corporations, the small farmers versus corporations. In every single case, the WTO has ruled on the side of big corporations and against people and the environment.
Cards are stacked against the small farmers. Cards are stacked against anyone who is on the periphery of the system. It has really become a trade which benefits the corporations at the expense of the poor.
The first 100 agreements by the WTO were all for the benefit, all on the side of rich multinational corporations and against public regulations, the environment, labor, consumer interests and rights, and also democratic sovereignty.
They understand that we can possibly get control over government and have government implement laws favoring we, the majority of the people, and the environment. They don't want that to happen. So they've created this supranational institution that is capable of doing an end run around government and canceling out federal, state, and local legislation that requires local content, that requires hiring local workers, that requires recycled materials, anything that would put restrictions on the conditions of production.
They're leaving the democratic accoutrements and democratic forms there. We still have all our elections, we still vote for all our senators and all that stuff. What they're doing is simply taking away the things that we can legislate about, the things that we can exercise our democratic sovereignty over, and they now have set up this WTO, which acts almost as an international veto power over and above the U.S. Constitution.
The kind of economic sanctions we could impose against, say, South Africa, or now we talked about, dictatorship in Burma, those kind of actions cannot be taken anymore. Our decision-making power, our power has been taken away because now all these are seen as a trade barrier by the World Trade Organization.
These guys are playing for real. There's only one thing that the ruling interests have ever wanted, and that's everything. They want all the investment, all the returns, all the wealth, all the advantages, all the civilities and comforts of modern society with none of the costs, none of the taxes, none of that. And that's what they want. They want everything. And really we should give them nothing.
This is not just a third world fight. It is not just a fight of the Americans. It's a fight where all of us have to globalize and come together. We have to see globalization from below for this one.
Before dawn today, activists from the Rainforest Action Network scaled this crane and began the process of setting climbing anchors to begin to unfurl this message.
The protest today was aimed at sending a strong message to the Seattle and international community that the World Trade Organization is a threat to our democracy and specifically to our hard-won environmental, health, safety, and labor laws.
Each of you represent thousands of other people around this country and around the world.
I think trade can be something that brings brings peace and prosperity to the world, not just money to a few corporations.
Lebanon is an observing member in the WTO, and I hope we can do something to convince them not to join.
A very exciting thing is emerging here in Seattle in people's opposition to the World Trade Organization. Labor groups, environmental groups, and human rights groups are coming together, in some cases for the very first time, because they realize that the WTO looks at a worker or at the environment as in the very same way, something to be chewed up and disposed and spit out.
Well, I think that the people that are out here, been standing in this rain for over a half an hour, demonstrate the commitment that American workers have to the proposition that they are not going to lose their jobs to a nameless, faceless international organization. While they're in there dining and eating hors d'oeuvres and drinking wine and champagne, we're out here saying American workers are going to stand together with the rest of the workers on this planet, and we're all going to have decent wages, we're all going to have good jobs, and they're not going to drive us down to the bottom.
I'm here today to join with all my brothers and sisters, and it's kind of amazing to see how many there really are who want to stand and protest against the WTO. And people are here. It's going to be a glorious bunch of days here showing our administration and the world that we care about labor and the environment, fair trade, not free trade.
We came from Japan for protest to WTO.
I want to protect Japanese culture.
My organization advocates on behalf of shareholders who are trying to change corporations as shareholders. So we had shareholder resolutions with Home Depot trying to get the company to stop selling old growth wood. And in August, the company announced that it would stop selling old growth. But the WTO threatens that. If eco-labeling is considered a non-tariff barrier to trade, then there's no incentive for corporations to stop unsustainable harvesting practices of wood. And so eco-labeling is essential, and that's what I wanted to say had I been given the opportunity, but I've been shut out.
It's been going on since the beginning of this continent's so-called creation, you know what I mean? I mean, it's been going on under everybody's nose, right in their face. So it's like everybody's asking all these questions. What is the WTO? How does it affect me? It's everything they're eating, everything they're wearing, everything they're watching, everything they're hearing.
It's raising a lot of consciousness, and I've been seeing it go on for the last month around Seattle. People have been preparing for the WTO. People have been asking about what's really going on, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of minds are being opened up by this, so I think it's progressive and it's positive overall.
In our history, the harvest we forgot to sow our seeds for the next season, and our children are dying as a result of our self-treason. So we destroy the whole future just so they will stay breathing. In the moment they exist and unconscious of the fact that time moves on and time
It's all around them already, and they're sitting here talking about fight it, fight it, fight it. Should have been fighting it since you were born. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm teaching her about. Well, yeah, her right there.
What is it to be when you're not free? If I'm a slave, then I'm not me. Just a fucked up image of what my captors wanted of me. But we're not free. As long as others aren't risen, we can't be. That means that I'm not me, but I'm responding to a higher calling. Still an individual, because my response is unique to my being. Enslaved to the struggle to free humanity. And if it battle within the world, lasts for eternity. And if I ever stop fighting, my spirit will cease to exist. So I continually resist the evil's attempt to arrest me. An underground MC tangled up in the roots of the humanity tree.
Why are you here tonight, or what kind of stuff were you into? What's going on? Well, I'm a poet who opposes the system and all these mental prisons that I see surrounding me. So I illustrate my feelings through words, and that's what I just did in front of a crowd of many.
The survival, but you must stand to live your life, and you must rise, and you must rise.
The tenants movement around the world, because of the effects of globalization and the pressure, the extra pressures that puts on tenants, which are basically landless workers, is that they're becoming more militant and they're engaging in large-scale direct actions and stuff like that.
We're here because there's a lot of people in town without places to stay, and we're a bunch of squatters that want to open up this place to the public.
We're teaching people
people how to respect one another, act collectively, trust each other, so we can go out and send a message to the world that the WTO is a horrible idea. It's bad for people, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for us. And people need to know that, and we're here to bring that message to the world. The WTO has the ability to override all governments, local jurisdiction on environmental issues, human rights issues, labor issues. They want to become a power unto themselves and override all of the rights and laws that we have to protect us. Non-violent direct action. Some people may choose to risk arrest, some people may not, but all of us are looking for creative ways to bring our message and let the WTO know they need to respect our humanity. I think that there are many responsible people here who care very deeply, who have a lot of passion, who are out there to non-violently bring our message to the world. The police are more of the problem than anything else. They're here to protect the people who are trying to violate our laws, and we hope that they exercise judgment on the day of and realize that we are peaceful people who are trying to demonstrate our rights.
Jubilee 2000 is a campaign to forgive third world debt. Too many people in too few countries have all the money. So we're out here to send a message to WTO that it's something that's really important to a lot of people.
We really do need to relieve debt from the poorest of the third world countries, because people will be forced to sell off their natural resources to pay their debts.
This is an interfaith group. We've been rallying up at the First United Methodist Church, and we're out here. The rain can't stop us. We got something to say.
I want to tell workers around the world that we're here to change and we need their help. I really don't understand that myself, you know, but we're here to get away with them. That's why the union's here. We're going to try to change things, try to do away with that WTO.
We come out here to protest the WTO because of the policies they're trying to impose upon us, upon the working people of the world.
We are united for our working people in the world. Just come together and support each other, really.
If workers in this country are in solidarity with workers in India and workers in Europe, then you'll see a rise in standard of living. And so that's why we're here in the rain, you know.
I'm protesting for workers' rights. I'm protesting for a living wage, a decent wage, a dignity, against slave shops, against child labor. And this is not a new issue, it's an old issue. We've been doing this for 200 years, and the issues are the same, and we're still fighting.
And as part of the labor movement, we're worried not only about jobs but the environment, and the WTO is a corporate, combined with corporations and corporate leaders that are strictly worried about profit.
Basically comes down to democracy versus corporate rule. You know, the people's got to stand up on our hind legs and you know, save the world for ourselves, because all they're trying to do is pick our pockets. After we leave Seattle, that's when the real work comes in. This is kind of fun right now. We're making a big noise and kind of putting it on the map, but we've pretty much got to go back and organize in our unions and in our towns, and you know, make sure that we put into place the kind of democratic structures, both on the local level and the global level, that'll essentially enable people to take control of our lives back from the corporations.
This isn't about whether or not we're for trade or against trade. It's what's the rules of the trade game going to be. And so we have a chance to say, not everybody in this country thinks the way that President Clinton thinks, to the whole world. That yes, we know that the planet gets smaller by the day. Yes, we know that trade is important and can change people's lives. But we need to have rules that put people before profits. We need to have rules that put the planet before profits. That's what this debate's all about. And this discussion that's going to go on in Seattle over the next few days, and all the civil protests and the demonstrations and the public debate and dialogue, is hopefully going to be a cornerstone for change.
I'm an activist. I'm also a steelworker, and I wasn't going to miss the invitation that Bill Gates put out. Even though I'm not invited to the World Trade Organization, I am planning on protesting in the streets. I oppose almost everything that the World Trade Organization stands for. I believe that we need regulations placed on capitalism.
Well,
Our history has been when we have tried to talk and sit down across the table with anyone that we want to make a point with, and we're not successful, that we are willing to and able to take our message to the street, to the people.
It's a place to be. I mean, this is the largest demonstration against corporate greed in America this year. The underlying issue is corporate greed. That's what brought us all here. And it's wonderful to see the young people and the trade unionists and the seniors and the farmers and the environmentalists and everybody coming together.
Clearly we need an organization. We need rules. We know that within society. But those rules need to be constructed. Now, so we're saying, fix it. This is your game. We're out of the WTO. You're in the WTO. Fix it. Fix it yourself. Or, as somebody said a while ago, nix it. Yeah. One of the two. Fix it or nix it.
It's going to take all of us to get together and stand up for our rights and stand up for our brothers and sisters and stand up for our next generation and their generation and their generation.
We're here in Seattle to draw international attention to this ministerial conference. We're here to educate people about what WTO is and what it is not. What you have is a faceless government who's making international decisions to determine what the workplace is going to be about, what trade is going to be about, and they right now are making decisions in favor of the multinational corporations, and the little people are getting left on the cutting room floor.
You know, at the beginning of the century, the effort on the part of ordinary people was to basically civilize a national economy. Now we live in a global economy, and we have to make sure that it works for working people. I mean, it can't just be the big conglomerates, it can't just be the big agribusinesses, it can't just be the Wall Street interests that are at the bargaining table. I mean, families need to be represented. The vast majority of people need to be represented. So this is a great gathering. The point is, we want to make sure that you got a trade agreement that has some respect for the environment, outlaws child labor, has some decent guarantees for people to be able to organize and bargain collectively to earn a decent living, respects human rights. I mean, that's what we're saying. And the vast majority of people in the country agree.
One of the great joys I had was walking today in that parade. As we walked today from the church over to the rally we had on the environment. And those of you that were marching, it was such a uplifting spirit. Dave Foster and I and a few others were at the front, and these young kids kept running ahead of us. The people in the turtle suits and the other young people, they kept going ahead. And I said to Dave, you know, these young kids aren't going to walk as slow as us. They're giving us the damn message. They want the world to change, and they aren't going to wait for us to do it. We better damn well do it ahead of everyone.
We have got to stand together, united in solidarity as a global trade union movement, representing all workers on this planet, saying that we ought to get our fair share of this global expansion, this economic expansion on a global level. That every worker ought to have the right to form a union if they choose, that every worker ought to have the right to collectively bargain to get a fair share of the pie, that children shouldn't be forced to go to work every day, that adults shouldn't be forced to produce products against their will, and that we ought to end discrimination based on employment, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's culture, whether it's organizational affiliation. We need to sweep that to the side and work together to make sure that we're all sharing in the prosperity, and not just multinational corporations.
I have done these kind of marches all over the United States for the AFL-CIO, and this one just simply hasn't stopped surging. The cross-section of America will be on the streets of Seattle during our march tomorrow.
It's going to be huge.
Well, I think they realize that it doesn't work for working families, working people. It's they really understand that it's about corporate greed and increasing the profit line while decreasing the wage line, and people's standard of living is being reduced every day, including ours right here in the U.S.
You know, we won't get this opportunity again. I mean, and let's think about this, because I think we should put it into context for the viewers. This is the largest meeting on international trade in the history of the world. It's the first time the WTO has met on American soil. It will be the last time in our lifetime that we'll probably meet on American soil, because by the time it rotates to its 134 plus countries, unfortunately I'll be dead and gone. So we won't get this second chance to set the stage.
We've got to be concerned about what these smaller national companies are doing to our jobs, and we need to fight and make sure everybody as a collective effort gets together and fights for our rights.
I'm here to stand up for the American worker, to stand up for the American dream. My father left me, he died last year, and he said, I made this world better for you, you make it better for your children. So I'm here trying to make it better for my children and stop the WTO from making it worse for all of us.
After the bill passes the Senate, if the president doesn't like it, he vetoes it. But if he likes it, he signs it, and then it becomes a law.
Good. What about the WTO?
What's that?
The World Trade Organization. They're like the most powerful organization on the planet. They've already overturned 3 U.S. laws. Laws that protect American workers. And the environment. All that Congress passed. And the president signed.
The World Trade Organization?
I'm telling you, the WTO is vetoing us.
Say no to the WTO.
I went up to Seattle to start a brand new world built from the heart, and stand beneath the starry crown. Good world, show me the way. Come on people, let's go up. Come on up, don't you wanna go up? Come on people, let's go up to Seattle to start. Well, I went up to Seattle to see what's become of democracy as tears roll down my tear-gassed eyes. Good world, show me the way. Come on, children, let's go up. Come on.
Then they load you up on a great big bus and they're taking you down to the Navy base. PepperSpray in your right in the face, try to break you down, try to get you to kneel. Renew like the unity, listen to real, and they can't make the spirit that's coming alive. And that's the kind of spirit that's bound to survive. Shut it down. We have only started. '99 was a Tuesday morning when we drew the line. It was a WTO coming to town. We swore we gonna shut it down, and they stood there. The dead police, they had the National Guard out to keep the peace with the guns and the clubs and the chemical gas. The fully would not let them pass, and they raised and roared and their tempers flared, and there were bombs bursting in the daylight air.
Prosperous, peaceful, and accountable economic world.
This is the beginning, and everything's at stake.
There's only one thing that the ruling interests have ever wanted, and that's everything.
What we are against is trade at any cost.
This is not about trade. This is about a corporate constitution.
We're pitted to be pitted against each other in a race to the bottom. Who will accept the most miserable working conditions?
Well, I think it's a very telling fact that you can go out on the street anywhere in the United States and ask people to give you one sentence about the World Trade Organization, and they won't be able to say one intelligible sentence about what it is, where it's based.
The World Trade Organization is the only international organization dealing with the global rules of trade between nations. Its main function is to ensure that trade flows as smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible. The result is a more
Shut it down. Millennium passing as the numbers climb and the people came from everywhere. There must have been 50,000 out there that were farmers, unions, rank and file. Every grassroots has its own style. There were great big puppets 2 stories tall. There were drummers drumming in the shopping malls. There were so many people that you couldn't see. How that many people got into the city and the WTO delegates too. We were locked down.